Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to today's Play Attention webinar. My name is Gwen Sorley, and I do appreciate all of you logging in today to join us for our first webinar in our new webinar series, How to Make ADHD Your Superpower. We appreciate your time, and we also appreciate your feedback. So at any time, if you do have questions or comments, make certain that you are typing those in the chat box below. Also, just a note that we are recording this event. So at the end of the webinar, you will receive a replay link in your email. Make certain you look for that email. There's a replay link so that you can watch the webinar later or share it with a friend or a family member or colleague who were unable to attend live. Again, my name is Gwen Sorley, and I'll be your host, and thank you all for joining us today. Today, our focus is actually going to be on creativity. We decided to make creativity our first theme, our first focus in this webinar series, because I think that when we talk to people, when we talk to parents or adults or professionals, and we say, what is your strength? What is your child really good at? What are your students' strengths, their good qualities? What are the strong points? I'd say 95% of the time, the very first thing they say is, he's really creative. I think I'm really creative. Everyone mentions creativity. So it does seem that ADHD and creativity often go hand in hand. So it's important we look at this because remember, our focus during this time is how to make ADHD your superpower. And I think all too often when we talk about ADHD, we really focus on the negatives, the problems it causes, the difficulties that arise due to ADHD, the negative characteristics. However, with ADHD come a lot of positive attributes, and that really needs to be our focus. How can we take those positive characteristics, learn how to manage them so that ADHD is actually our superpower? So let's look at creativity and explore it a little bit more. Why is creativity important? Is there truly a connection between ADHD and creativity? And how can we explore and encourage creativity in our day-to-day lives? Have you ever left your child with something very ordinary, perhaps an empty box? And when you come back into that room, the box has become something, oh, sorry about that. Oh my goodness, I'm going too far. The box, the box has become something completely different, right? You have that empty box, and then suddenly you look outside, and here's your child who's taken that box and made it into something completely different. That is creative. It's like the little character I had on the first slide who was saying, I don't just think outside the box. I take that box and I make something really awesome. So sometimes that creative mind can take an ordinary item and create something amazing. Whereas you might have another child who's in a room with that same box, and that child will go to the bookshelf and actually start putting books into the box because that's what the child knows the box is for. That's the use of a box. But then you have this other child who thinks outside the box and does something and sees something completely different. So it does seem that we have a lot of individuals with ADHD who are very creative. So now I want to have your feedback. If you would, type in that chat box and let me know. If you think about yourself or your child or your clients or your students, and they're very creative, how are they expressing their creativity? Go ahead and write down some of your responses in the chat box. Do they express their creativity through music? Is it through painting or drawing? Is it they're singing? Is it something that you do in the workplace? Is it your project planning? Is it your problem solving? What do you think is the way that you express your creativity? Let's see, I want to share some of these with you. Danielle says hands-on. Allison says arts and crafts. Danielle says usually with art. Catherine says through art, photography. Very nice. Joyce, art and drawing. Laura, song and performance. Hannah, coming up with stories from just a few ideas from writing prompts. Very nice. Lavandra, painting. Kristen says, my son's imagination is incredible. Marcy, my twins love to draw. Doris says, my child cuts up pieces of cloth and creates collages. Everything gets saved and becomes some type of art. Excellent. We're going to actually talk about that in a little bit, Doris. That's a great idea. Joy says, draws, music, writes stories, singing. Josh, drawing, Lego sculpture. I hear a lot about Legos, Josh, and writing novels. Nice. Glenda, through painting, drawing, and problem solving. Jolene says 12-year-old grandson enjoys creating through Scratch. Wanda, journalism. Nice. Jean, through design and creating greeting cards. Maria, movement. Amy, storytelling, usually exaggerated. Excellent. Jessica, imaginative play, storytelling. Andrea, imaginary play, art, music. Danielle, different problem solving strategies. Travis says his son is creative with Legos. Tamar, crazy connections between people and ideas. Tamar, we're going to talk about those connections too. Very good. Josh, elaborate battle planning with toys, pair of siblings. Excellent. Danielle, playing violin, making worlds on Minecraft, drawing. And Kat, clay, paper, paint, collage, and all the same time, not finishing anything. This is me as an adult with ADHD. And Kat, that is a very important point, because we're talking about how to manage these characteristics of ADHD so that they will be a positive. So it is important, what you bring up is that you're very creative, but now how do we work on that task completion so that you can actually complete those great ideas that you have? Very good. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Those were really wonderful shares, and I'm glad that everyone was able to express how their child or yourself or your clients use their creative spirit. So it does seem that some typical traits of ADHD could actually encourage creative thinking. And it doesn't just seem that way. There are scientific studies and research out there that has shown this to be true. There's a great article in Scientific American, and it will be in this ebook follow-up that I'm going to share with everyone so that you can actually look at the specific research links that I include. And it's called the ADHD Advantage, the ability to think more creatively. And they point out 3 aspects of creative cognition. Those include divergent thinking, conceptual expansion, and overcoming knowledge constraints, what your previous knowledge is, right? Just like that child who had that empty box, knew it was an empty box, knew what a box is used for, so started stacking books instead of creating something new. So let's look at divergent thinking. This is the ability to think of many ideas from a single starting point. And it's a critical part of creative thinking. Research has actually shown that people with ADHD are exceptionally good at divergent thinking tasks, such as inventing or creating new uses for everyday objects, and brainstorming new features for an innovative cell phone device. There was also a study done with college students. There was a group of students who had ADHD and a group of students without ADHD. And they asked those students how they prefer to approach problems. Those with ADHD were more likely to enjoy coming up with new ideas, whereas those without ADHD were more likely to enjoy using or developing current or existing ideas. So just those two research studies alone show that ADHD is linked to the elements of creative thinking, including divergent thinking, conceptual expansion, and overcoming knowledge constraints. If we even look at the characteristics of creativity, right? If you look up that on Google and say characteristics of a creative person, the qualities typically include imagination, daydreaming, persistence, high energy, risk taking, curiosity, sense of humor and playfulness, sensitivity or intensity, perception. So just take a look at all of those qualities on the screen. Do they sound familiar? Many times, these very same qualities that are used to describe a person who is creative, they are also used to describe a person who has ADHD. So when we look at these different characteristics or traits, oftentimes they're described as problems or challenges, high energy, risk-taking, daydreaming. But if you learn to manage them and to harness them, then you may see your creativity take wing. Let's just look at two very common characteristics that are associated with ADHD. And you may see that the qualities that make it difficult to complete assignments on time or follow through with multiple step instructions may also promote creative thinking. If we look at impulsivity, this is your ability to control your impulsive responses. If you have a lack of inhibitory control, it means you have difficulty holding back when you want to say something or do something, which we all know, and probably many of us have experienced before, can cause problems, right? If you can't control what you want to say or do in that moment, then you might end up calling out random things in the middle of class, or you might speak out of turn in a meeting or keep interrupting people. You might watch your child on the playground and he suddenly gets an idea that he wants to do and tries to get all of the other students on board to do something that he's doing impulsively. And the other children don't really know how to respond because they're in a game right now. They're in a particular game and he's just impulsively going off and doing something different. So if it is managed, if it is not managed, it can cause a problem. But if it is managed, then it can be a quality because it can actually quiet the inner critic and let your ideas flow freely. Let's look at distraction. Many times we hear you're easily distracted. He's always distracted. The smallest things distract him. But studies suggest that kids who have trouble tuning out environmental distractions may find that all those elements combine in interesting ways. And that's what leads to new ideas. And I think that this is exactly what Albert Einstein was referring to when he referred to his daydreaming as his thought experiments. And many of his teachers just criticized him as being a daydreamer, told him he would not become anything. He would not be able to do anything with his life because he was such a daydreamer. But he really was taking that time as his thought experiments. He was making incredible connections that the rest of us could not see. And that's how he came up with such unbelievable ideas throughout his lifetime. So you have these qualities, or your child has these qualities. There is a connection between the creative mind and the mind of an ADHD individual. So, is it important? Is it really important that we encourage creativity? It is. Creativity actually improves problem solving. It allows you to express yourself, encourages teamwork, can reduce stress and anxiety, leads to fun and happiness, gives you a sense of pride. I know all of you have seen your child's face when he or she finishes an art project or a Lego structure, and you can see the pride in their face. So it does truly lead to a sense of pride, and it opens new doors. These are just a few of the benefits of creativity. So we know you have the characteristics within you. We know that this can be one of your true superpowers. So how do we take opportunities in the classroom or at home or in the workplace to make certain that we encourage creativity? The very first thing you want to start with, because we talk about how to manage certain characteristics to make certain that everything stays in a positive light. So it's important to identify for yourself and for your child or your students times when daydreaming, high energy, and impulsivity do need to be controlled, because there are those times, aren't there? And we're all very aware of them, but we need to make certain that our children and our students are aware of those times as well. Have that conversation with them. Write it down on paper, illustrate it, have them illustrate it. They're the creative people. So have them illustrate times when that high energy is appropriate and times when you actually have to control that high energy and really transition. Once you identify that, you also want to provide specific times when creativity is actually encouraged at home, in the workplace, and at school. I don't know why I'm so tongue-tied today. So let's look at some ideas of creativity in the classroom. Now, as I go through this list, please do type in your suggestions, and I'm going to share some of those at the end, because it's really important when you share your ideas, and we can even put together a master list and share it on our social media, because I'm just going to mention a few ideas that you can start incorporating. But if you suddenly come up with a great idea, or there's an idea that you've already implemented, then please do type your ideas. So some ideas for creativity in the classroom: songwriting. Have your students write a song to help them remember math facts, spelling words, or a time in history. Change roles. Allow your students to choose a topic that is being covered and they become the teacher. Allow them to research that topic and then teach that topic to the rest of the class. Act it out. This is always a fun activity for students. And actually, the act of acting it out and performing a subject matter or a piece of literature helps them with their memory. Same with music. Whenever you can get them actively involved, it helps with their memory system. TED Talk it out. Now, I know many of you have watched TED Talks, but if you have an older child, have you ever shared those TED Talks with them on a topic maybe that really interests them? Use TED Talks as inspiration, and then have your students watch use those TED Talks as inspiration, and then create their own TED Talk on a particular subject. Tech, please. Many of our students who have ADHD, or just in general, are very tech savvy, and they really enjoy programming and doing things on the computer. So take that opportunity, take that specific interest, and have them select a subject and create an innovative website to inform others about a subject matter. Remember, if they're working in groups, you need some people who are good at writing, some people that are good at scripting, and some that are good at graphical design, all different areas of creativity. And you can actually have them create a web page together and share their creativity in different ways. Be a reporter, have your students interview someone in the community in order to learn more about a topic. And visual storytelling. A lot of you said your child or your students are great with art. Make certain you encourage your students to create a series of illustrations to engage the audience in a story. Looks like I have some other ideas here. Let's see, Allison says, I use Tim Urban's Inside the Mind of a Master Procrastinator to talk about time management. My students with ADHD found it helpful in a fun way. Excellent. Jolene says, I feel that changing roles can work at home as well. Child can be the parent and explain to me, the child, on how to behave or what to do. That's a great idea, Jolene. Very good idea. Now let's look at creativity at home. And many of you brought up some ideas, but you can create individual or family vision boards. You can host a karaoke or dance night. And this is always a fun time to just let everything go, right? Sing like no one is listening, dance like no one is watching. And you would be surprised at some of the creativity and the talents that actually appear. Have a talent night. Everyone selects, practices, and performs their special talent. And no judges are necessary. You can just have a good time and entertain each other. Take an online art class or sign up for a local class with friends. And someone mentioned this, I can't remember which one of you mentioned the craft area. You said everything that we have ends up being an art project, right? You have scraps of fabric, any little knickknacks you may have. Create an area where you keep all different items, paints, markers, everything you can think of. And everyone can add different items to that craft area. And that allows people to go into that craft area and create something that is original and an original piece of art. Now, when you think about hosting a karaoke or a dance night or talent night, especially, remember if there are other family members or friends that cannot physically be at your house, then you can always do a talent night very easily via Zoom. You can create a Zoom talent night and share each other's talents virtually over the computer. You can be kitchen creative. If you have a child or you yourself enjoy cooking, then create a new original recipe inspired by your favorite ingredients, or come up with a fusion meal idea and have a family member create fusion meal. So it might be Asian Italian, or it could be a host of different things. You could put a bunch of different ideas in a hat and you draw two of them out and you have to make that as a fusion meal. So lots of different things you can do in the kitchen to be creative as well. Find new uses for items. This is like the box we were talking about. And so you could have a bunch of items that everyone's collected from around the house and then put them on the table, and everyone has to come up with a new use for different items. Then there's always the idea of not really having anything in mind. Just unplug. No computers, no tablets, phones, video games. And once everyone is unplugged, now what? Now what are you going to do? Chances are someone's going to come up with something really creative to do. Now let's talk about creativity in the workplace. This sometimes is a challenge, and we get so busy in our work day that sometimes you forget to step back and really encourage creativity. So one of the things you'll want to do in the workplace is make certain that everyone knows that you do encourage creativity, that your colleagues can share knowledge and brainstorm ideas, and that out of the box thinking is actually explored and encouraged. Switch up your office routine. So maybe instead of having a meeting around a table, get up, go outside and walk, have a walking meeting. Or you might do a brainstorming session in a coffee shop, or at this point, maybe a virtual coffee shop. Create a brainstorming wall where everyone can write new ideas, a riddle of the day, suggestions, anything that will stimulate the brain. Create time and space for self-reflection and mindfulness. It has been shown that meditation does have powerful effects for creativity. So make certain that you're not always sitting there in front of your computer trying to come up with that new idea. Many times when you just step back and you let your mind go, that's when that creative thought will come to you. Play happy music. We've always heard lots in the past about classical music, but research has shown that listening to happy music seems to lead to more and more innovative solutions over to just listening to silence. Actual MRI scans show that your brain lights up when you listen to your happy music. And happy music is different for everyone. So it is your personal happy music. Have stand-up meetings instead of sitting down. Make certain everyone stands up. That oftentimes changes the energy in the room and a lot more enthusiasm and creativity. And then remember to build it. Someone said here, I think it was Danielle, that your child is hands-on. And we as adults often have to remember a lot of times hands-on is best for us as well. So you might write down an idea, you might sketch it out, and then you might build a prototype. When others can actually see your idea, it inspires them. And it will also give you an opportunity to see your idea from a new perspective to make changes or improvements. I think I have a couple of more suggestions here. Let's see. Tazio really enjoys creating unusual dishes with his grandfather. We have made a catering company. Some even made it to the menu. Excellent. Andrea says, life is a creative craft project to our 8-year-old daughter. I want to encourage this creativity, but she can't keep up with her whirlwind of items constantly being strewn about the house. Any tips on creative organization? You know, that's funny that you bring this up, Andrea, because that's exactly what I'm going to talk about now. So we know that creativity is part of many people with ADHD, and that there are true benefits to creativity. So we do want to see creativity as a strength. However, there has to be a balance, right? We have to be able to manage some of these skills. We need to learn how to develop the skills that could keep your creative dreams from becoming a reality. How many of you here, you can just raise your hand, use that raise your hand icon. How many of you have ever felt that you have so many great ideas, so many innovative, creative ideas, and yet you haven't actually been able to execute those ideas because of your lack of focus, because of your procrastination, because you start a million of these great ideas and you're not able to see it through to the end? Or maybe you see that in your child as well. Or as Andrea is saying, you know, her child is having a difficult time with executive function in that she sees life as a creative exploration, and yet she has projects everywhere and strewn about. So organization, we know, is part of executive function. And all of these skills we need to learn how to manage so that creativity can be a positive and our creative dreams can become a reality. And it looks like many of you say that you can absolutely relate to that. So this is where play attention can help. Play attention actually helps you develop those core cognitive skills that are necessary, that lay the foundation for strong executive function. And we do this in a very unique way in that we integrate that feedback-based technology. You see that body wave armband on the student's arm, and that armband has 3 sensors. And those sensors are monitoring his brain activity that tells us how attentive he is. And then that information is given over to the computer where he's allowed to control all of the cognitive exercises just with his mind, or more specifically, his attention alone. And he receives constant and immediate feedback as to whether or not he truly is focused and paying attention. And that's a really important first step in the learning process, where they actually begin to experience what it takes for them personally to stay very attentive. And we do this again through the integration of feedback-based technology with cognitive skill training. So when we look at an individual and customize your plan, we're setting up your profile so that you are going to activate all of the cognitive exercises with your attentive state. So you may need to work on attention. You may need to work on task completion. Perhaps you need to work on your skills of auditory processing or following through with multiple step instructions, controlling your impulses, processing the information around you. Remember, all of these foundational skills are necessary so that you can express your creativity, so that you can improve executive function and really make certain that your creative dreams can become a reality, that you can execute those creative thoughts, that you can follow through. If you are an out-of-the-box thinker and you want to bring those ideas and bring them to fruition at work, then we need to work on those foundational skills in order to make certain that we manage our creativity and make certain that it's a positive in our life. And that's what we focus on and play attention. So to go to you, Andrea, when we look at the organization, and we do have one of our ebooks, and we can look and sending that to you, where we talk about organizing and how to organize spaces. So that may really help you. However, organization, we know, is an area of executive function. And in order to improve her ability to organize, then we need to improve her attention to the environment or to her project. We need to be able to improve her ability to process the information around her, remember where things are located, control her impulsive responses. And all of those foundational skills are what we're working on within Play Attention. Leah says she could use the ebook on organization as well. Absolutely. We'll make certain you get that. So there is a 3-part process to Play Attention. We start with a consultation. So if any of you wanted to talk about your particular needs in a consultation one-on-one, we can talk about strengths and weaknesses and develop a customized plan so that you can review the plan and look at how we will take those strengths and make certain that we highlight those strengths and look at those areas we want to improve, and have a specific plan on how we can set up your Play Attention profile in order to improve those skills. We do have assessments available, and many of you have been to our webinars in the past where we talk about the 2 different assessments we have. One is Focus, which is a norm reference test of attentional control. The other is the Brief, which is a behavior rating of executive function. And so many of you have asked us to continue our 50% off on those assessments. So if you would like an assessment on either the Focus assessment or the Brief or either one of those or both, we will give you those at half price. They're typically $50 a piece. So each one would be $50. And we don't just do the assessment or provide you with the assessment. We then need about a 30-minute block of time to review the results and talk about those results with you. Talk about the areas that can be improved. Make a plan. And so those are really good times where the assessment and the consultation is one part. Jacob, yes, we will get that to you as well. And we'll look at a customized training plan. And this training plan is where we pinpoint the different cognitive skills that you need to strengthen in order to have strong executive function, in order to make certain that ADHD is your superpower and that we can release your creativity. So remember, creativity is important. I think when you now go back and you think about yourself and your child and your students, you may think, that is really amazing. Creativity is a talent. So let's explore that more and see how we can encourage that creativity while helping your child or yourself manage those different characteristics so that ADHD is a strong point. We look at the positives and make certain that they are a strong point in your life. All right. If you would like to, okay, Thomas, that's a good question. If you want the assessments, that's something I'm going to talk about now. If you want the assessment, just type in assessments and we will follow up with you and make certain that we can talk to you about the brief and the focus assessments and determine which assessment you would like to do. And then we'll get those out to you. Once we send those to you electronically, as soon as you complete them, we'll do a follow-up call. So anyone who's interested in proceeding with the assessments, and then again, remember, it's not just an assessment, but we need to schedule about a 30-minute block of time after that to review the results, okay? Now, there are a few other things, and please do keep your questions coming because I am going to address all of your questions. Just a couple of things upcoming that I want to mention. One is that we are having a webinar next week. It's not part of this series, but is a great webinar to attend because we're going to talk about self-care and how self-care is important. It's important and it is not selfish. So self-care is not selfish. So if you would like to attend that webinar, just type in webinar and we'll make certain that you are registered for next week's webinar. Same time, so Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. If you are interested in the assessments, either the focus assessment or the brief assessment or both, just type in assessment and we'll make certain that you are contacted to review those assessments, determine which one you'd like to do, and then we'll get those out to you. Susan, absolutely. Okay, great. Yes, just keep those coming and we'll make certain we follow up with everyone. There is, if you're not interested in the assessment, you just want to go straight to the consultation, just type in consultation and we'll contact you in order to set up that time for the consultation. Those are usually about 40-minute blocks of time where, again, we talk about your different strengths and weaknesses, areas you'd like to improve, and then we can talk about how we can customize a profile, customize a neurocognitive training program to help you improve executive function. There's also professional training coming up. So I know that some of you here today are current clients. If you are a current professional client, then remember, tomorrow starts our 3-part professional webinar training series where we're going to talk about focus, effective coaching practices, and our certified provider program. So if you have not yet registered for our professional training and you are a current professional, type in training because those webinar trainings are going to be really important. Sure, Marcy, we'll get you registered for that. And I want to announce the next webinar in this series, and that is Find Your Passion. So if you want to come to the Find Your Passion webinar, which will be number 2 webinar in our How to Make ADHD Your Superpower, type in passion and we will make certain that we get you registered for the next webinar, because we know not only are people with ADHD very creative, but they're also very passionate. And so we want to make certain that we are able to bring out the best of your ADHD superpowers by helping you find something to get passionate about. So I'm going to keep this list up here because many of you are still typing in some of the items you want. Remember, if you want to be contacted with the assessment package, just type in assessment. Next week's webinar, just webinar, consultation. If you are a current play attention professional and you want the training, just type in training. Those are going to be a great webinar series. And then, of course, the next webinar, type in passion if you want to be at the passion webinar. All right. And any other questions, please do type in your questions and I will address them here. But I think that many of you are just typing in. If you asked for the other ebook, that's great. We'll get that to you. Let's see. Glenda, did you say the assessments include solutions to remediate and address areas of weaknesses identified in the assessment? You know, we will identify some of the areas that need to be improved, and then we will look at a play attention plan where we actually pinpoint the different cognitive skills that we can put into your profile and actually work on strengthening those core skills in order to improve executive function. So yes, it's not just going to be, here's the results, this is what's weak. Many of you already know some of those areas that need to be improved, but what's the next plan? What's the plan? Where we go with that information? And that's what will help you do, Glenda. All right. Then can you just, you typed in your name, but can you type in exactly what you would like? Jane, no problem if you missed some of the presentation. We are going to send out the recording in just a little bit. Allison, is anything covered by medical insurance? I'm assuming that you're asking if play attention is covered by medical insurance. Traditional medical insurance typically does not cover play attention because we're not a medical device, we're an educational tool. However, if you do have a flexible spending account or a health savings account, those typically will cover. Okay. All right. So good to see many familiar names, because our previous webinar series was on executive function, and many of you here actually attended that webinar series. And remember, if you didn't get the opportunity to see that series, make certain you go to our website and go to the executive function webinar series recordings, because that's where all of the ebooks and podcasts and webinar recordings for that series are located. Okay. All right. Looks like many of you will be coming to our passion webinar, and let me just make certain I have addressed everyone's questions. Everyone else is just requesting different items. Alice, let's talk about that in a one-on-one, because need a little bit more information, I think, in order to really answer that completely. Okay. All right, excellent. Tamar says, creativity is my signature strength, but I cannot seem to finish a product. Yes. So you're asking, what can play attention do for that? Play attention specifically addresses your ability to start and complete tasks in a timely manner. One of our activities is actually called Time on Task, where we teach you how to start an assignment right away, keep your attention just on that assignment until completion, that closed-end tasking. So you actually have to complete tasks within play attention, but just with your mind alone. You can only complete your tasks if you are staying actively engaged, if you are actually paying attention. If you're not paying attention, then the body wave armband is going to monitor that. And the activity, your task, is going to stop. And it's not going to start again until you focus in. So we're actually training you. We're creating that new neural pathway you need in order to start and complete in a timely manner. And then we also have the academic bridge, where you'll put the armband on and we'll monitor your brain activity while you're doing a creative task or an academic task. As long as you're paying attention to your artwork or your reading, you're going to hear from the computer, good, great. If you start to drift, it'll say focus, and then you have to focus back in order to get started again. So those are two specific activities I would recommend for your program. However, also remember all the underlying skills that are necessary for task completion. You have to be able to filter out distractions. If you're constantly distracted, you're not going to finish anything. We work on that in every single play attention session. You have to be able to direct and sustain your attention. We work on that in every single play attention activity. You have to be able to process the information. So again, all of those foundational skills are going to be addressed within your program. So our goal is to strengthen executive function, but part of that is to avoid procrastination, remain on task, and get assignments done in a timely manner. Yes, Alice, we can work on, we do have specific activities that can help with that. And we do have a full behavior shaping program as well. Shadana, I did talk about insurance just a little bit ago, so hopefully you heard that. Health savings accounts or flexible spending accounts typically do cover. Leah, how do I sign up for the executive function webinars? That was our previous webinar series, so they're posted on our website, but we can email that direct link to you. Okay. Travis, typically our webinars are earlier in the day, but we are going to record all of these events, so he can always watch the recordings. Okay. All right, thank you so much. Everyone has requested a lot of different items, so make certain that you watch for your items and we will try to get everything out in a very timely manner. Helen, yes, Play Attention is international, so certainly we'll ship and support in Canada. You'll be assigned a personal executive function coach, one of our coaches, to assist you every step of the way. So absolutely, we will ship and support you in Canada, no problem. Let's see. You know, Glenda asks, how well does this marry with dyslexia and aphasia? Now, it's very common that there are multiple conditions, right? It's very rare that attention difficulties exist on their own, usually attention difficulties and dyslexia, attention difficulties and ODD or OCD or auditory processing. And the important thing to remember is that play attention is developing those foundational skills. So you can have a great program that addresses dyslexia specifically. However, if you can't pay attention to that teaching method, then it's going to be really difficult to get maximum benefit. So this is a good combination where you're working on play attention to have those foundational skills so that you can be successful with other learning programs, with counseling. These are the skills that you need in order to get maximum benefit. But also, in that same respect, when we can improve attention and processing and impulse control, we often see that the other areas of concern lessen in severity. But I think, Glenda, you registered for a consultation, if I'm not mistaken. So I think we can get a little bit more specific during your consultation as well. Lazara, can I work with play attention during my session with child with ADHD? I'm uncertain if you could be a little bit more clear. You and your child can both go through the Play Attention program, and we'll customize a plan for both of you if that's what if that's what you're asking. All right. Wanda, medication is different for everyone, and that is a medical concern. So any medical questions, I recommend that you talk to your doctor. Medication works for some people by controlling symptoms. The difficulty with medication is that medication doesn't teach any skills and it doesn't change behaviors. So we don't want to medicate and fail to educate. If you're using medication to set the stage for learning, then it's really important to use that time and have a program in place to help develop the skills that medication alone cannot develop. So that's what Play Attention can do. You can use Play Attention whether you're on medication or not on medication, and be able to improve skills, because Play Attention can teach the skills that medication alone cannot teach. And again, Wanda, these are great questions that we can explore further in your consultation, okay? All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for staying on, all your great comments and questions. We will be certain to get all of this information out to you if you did request some other next steps. I appreciate you being here today, and we look forward to seeing you at next week's webinar on self-care. We also look forward to seeing you in our later webinar on passion, and keep watching our website so that you're updated on the remaining webinars in this series, How to Make ADHD Your Superpower. Thanks so much, everyone. It's been a pleasure speaking to all of you. I'm sorry I was tongue-tied a couple of times there, but I really appreciate your time and your attention. Take care, everyone. Look forward to working with you.